An Illinois law banning credit card companies and banks from charging swipe fees on taxes and tips is now on hold for now. Capitol Bureau Chief Max Cotton explains the reason and why both sides are now celebrating.
Earlier this year, Illinois banned swipe fees on taxes and tips as a part of the fiscal year 2025 budget bills Governor Pritzker signed into law in June. It's known as the Interchange Fee Prohibition Act and goes into effect July 1st, 2025. The American Bankers Association and Illinois Bankers Association are now leading a lawsuit saying it violates federal law.
There are laws that are issued by U.S. Congress, the National Bank Act and the Homeowners Loan Act, that establish that national banks, federal savings associations that are chartered under those federal laws cannot be subject to Illinois laws like this.
The judge found the IBA demonstrated likelihood of success in their arguments as the case moves forward that the state cannot impose the law on nationally chartered banks. However, she did not include credit card companies and Illinois chartered banks in her injunction, meaning as of right now, the state can still enforce the law on those institutions starting in July. That's why Illinois Retail Merchants Association President and CEO Rob Karr, a major supporter of the new law, is encouraged by the ruling.
Now the focus is squarely on the credit card companies. For decades, they've been hiding behind banks. That veneer has now been peeled away, and they're going to have to answer now for their actions.
Sitani says the IBA hopes to eventually expand the injunction to include all banks and payment networks, including credit card companies. She also says the new law would be impossible to comply with and create chaos. Karr disagrees, arguing payment systems can make it work, adding that it would save money for small businesses and consumers. In Springfield, Max Cotton, WGEM News.
Now, both sides agree the case is still early in the process. Despite her recent ruling, the judge has not yet heard formal arguments.